as you know, Tom Sizemore just recently passed away. So Tom was a friend of mine, and I worked with him on a couple of shows, and we were actually scheduled to do another one later this year, which obviously isn't going to happen now. But the first time that I met Tom, I had a really fun experience. So I was playing a detective. Well, Tom was the suspect. Turns out, of course, the murderer eventually. Anyways, this hasn't come out, so I can't say the name. But anyway, so Tom gets on the set, and he just wasn't super feeling it that day. He was a little bit under the weather, and he's a little bit higher up on the pole than me, so he could make some demands of the director. But before he did, he says, I'm just going to go tell this director, we're not going to do the script today. We're going to improv it. Are you cool with that?
Talent Talk is sponsored by Company of Rogues Actors Studio, New York-style training for actors at all stages of their journey. With our part-time classes and full-time masterclass program, Rogues provides a unique post-secondary option under the guidance of working professionals. Mentoring and developing professional film and theater artists since 1993, Calgary's longest-running independent studio offers practical hands-on classes in a positive, supportive environment. Check us out at corogues.com. Company of Rogues, passionate about the art of acting.
Hey everybody, I'm Gary McLean, and you are watching Talent Talk. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, please do go to the Talent Talk YouTube channel and subscribe today. As always, your support's appreciated. Now, also a reminder that this is actually available on podcast mediums such as Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, just to name a few. If you'd like a full list of where you can actually listen to the show, check out the description and details of this show and previous episodes. Now, today's guest, he is a Canadian actor who has recently been cast as Piers Rothschild in the horror film Big Cats, which will be filming in London, England later this spring. Now, although he's done numerous film and television titles, he doesn't stop there. No, he's done, stunt work, directed, produced multiple projects. So I want to find out more about this guy and what he's done and what he's going to do. And so please join me in welcoming Douglas Vermeeren to the show.
Hey, it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to finally chat with you there, Douglas. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
So let's give the viewers a little idea of where you're at right now.
Right now, I'm actually in LA, so I'm getting ready to come back to Canada. As you guys know, it was Academy Awards weekend this weekend, and there was all kinds of events going on and things. So I attended an event that was built for independent filmmakers and so forth, and well, I walked away with a friend. So so we had a really good weekend here. But now it's time to come home, get back to work.
Right. So did you have to have to do a speech for that or anything?
I did a speech. It was so surreal. Like, it was just like, again, they had me walk the red carpet and do all the interviews with all the media that was there. And so did all the other nominees for this award. And then, no kidding, like literally seconds before I was to be on stage to accept this award, one of the organizers came over and called me over and said, okay, you're going to stand here. And I really didn't know, like, why I stand here. Like, are they introducing all the nominees? Like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden they cut to commercial break for the Oscars. And for this event, they were viewing the Oscars, but whenever there's a commercial break, they were going to hand out an award. So quickly, immediately, as they went to commercial, they showed the demo reels or sizzle reels, if you will, of all of the actors that were nominated. And then they announced me. And then the lady's like, okay, go, 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 go. And I'm like, what? Like, it just happened so quick. I had no idea what was going on. And they put this thing in my hand and asked me how I felt about it. And I was like, great. And, I barely had time to just kind of say thanks to you, and you, and you. And I hope I didn't forget anybody. And then they're like, get off. We're back to the Academy Awards.
Yeah,
so it was just like, it was that quick. But it was so much fun. And there were so many great people there. I was actually especially touched. One of my really good friends is Sean Kennan, who is on Karate Kid 3 as Mike Barnes, and he's on season 5 and 6 of Cobra Kai and all these things. And he was there to be there for me. He was the first guy I got to give a hug to as I got off the stage. And then another friend of mine, Zach Yanni, he's in Wakanda Forever and The Woman King and stuff. And he came over and sat at my table. And it was just so cool to see so many friends that I haven't seen for a while. So what an amazing weekend. And I kind of still feel like I'm on cloud nine. It's just a bit nuts. So
Well, and obviously, I have not been in your situation before, and I know lots of us haven't. So, in that situation, like, do you have to pay to go to that event?
no, I'm sure that there are people that maybe can buy tickets. Like it's not like kind of open to the public, generally speaking. Like in Canada, I've attended things like the Juno Awards and the Country Music Awards. Oftentimes I get given tickets to that, but I do know that those are also events that are open to the public. So sometimes you can attend the award shows, but I think it's very hard to get on some of the lists. Now, this one here, it's interesting because in LA, when the Academy Awards are going, obviously they've only got limited space for the televised sessions of the Academy Awards, but there's other sessions and there's award things going on all over the city, literally. And so the one that I went to had a lot of celebrities and individuals that didn't get into the Academy Awards. So they were at shows like this, like events like this. And so, no kidding, I had a chance to meet some real cool legends. In fact, one that I was super happy to have met, like I'd admired her films since I was watching her as a kid, was Cynthia Rothrock, the martial artist, because I'm a martial artist too. So it's funny, as I was getting ready to go in and I bumped into my buddy Zach. Well, he happened to be chatting with Cynthia, and I'm like, introduce me. Right. And then it was so funny. So the aftermath of this is yesterday I was doing meeting after meeting. So one of my friends was the Academy Award winning producer of What Dreams May Come with Rob Williams and Cuba Gooding Jr. So I met with him for breakfast, and in the same private club where we were at, David Duchovny was just beside us on the table. So I started chatting with David because, of course, he shot X-Files in Vancouver. So yes. He loves Canada like nobody's business. So we really had a cool connection there. And then I had another meeting yesterday with Mark Headley, who's used to be on the Arizona Film Commission. And he's a director and producer. And he and I are doing a cowboy movie later this year called Lone Oak. And so I'm just bumping into all my friends. It's like, what's going on? I'm a magnet for just finding the people that I know. But how would I be like in a chair next to them in a big city like Los Angeles? Like, how are we in the same? I don't know. We just must travel in the same circles. But it's crazy.
No, that's very cool, though. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, well, that's. I'll be there one day. Yeah.
Well, come with me next time.
There you go. Right.
I'm actually back to LA to film a film here right after you mentioned Big Cats. But as soon as I finish Big Cats in London, I'll be back here to do a show for 13th Floor Productions. They've done stuff for Lifetime and Hallmark, and they distribute through Mar Vista and a few big companies. But I'm doing a film for them called Tenants, like an apartment tenant, like Tenants. And it's a scary movie. And I'm not going to give away too many details, but it's very unique to work with someone who's done stuff for Hallmark, all kind of like feel good, Christmassy, nice, special movies, to doing a scary movie, right? Like just a super flip. But I'm excited, and the script is incredible.
And what are you doing with that film yourself?
Well, I'm only going to say, I think, what I'm allowed to say. I'm not sure what my boundaries are, but I'm actually one of the leads in it, and I'm a killer.
Spoiler.
Yeah, so I better not say too much. It's all right. I promise you probably won't like me from the beginning of that show. So it's probably not a big surprise that I end up doing some mean things to other people. So, yeah.
Well, that's kind of funny because usually they try and keep that on the down low, right?
Yeah.
You seem like the nice guy up front.
Yeah. I mean from the get-go. But you know what? Having said that, I've got to be careful because I might be saying some things about that are not entirely true, just to throw you off guard a little bit.
Perfect.
So I'm not the worst of the worst, but anyways, you'll see. You'll get a chance to see.
Awesome. Yeah. No. And when does that start?
We start actually mid-May. So I'll be back in LA to shoot that mid-May. I think I wrap Big Cats on the 13th of May. And then 2 days later, I'm back in LA working on that show. That's
pretty quick turnaround for.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be. Yeah. Sometimes it can be. Yeah.
And actually, one of the other questions I had on my list here was, so, I mean, you've had a pretty long, illustrious career so far. Where has it kind of taken you around the world? Like all over?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, literally all over. So I think the strangest places that I've been, I did a lot in Asia. So I actually was co-host of a TV show on China TV for a while, which was really interesting because I only speak a little bit of Chinese, Yidian. And so as I was co-hosting this show, It was very much like an America's Got Talent kind of variety show. And so when they do the acts, I would sometimes just watch the girl's body language to kind of see how like she was responding. Did she like it? Did she not like it? Because I really didn't understand it entirely what just happened, right? So if it looked like she liked it, I'd be like, worship Kao Sing, which means I'm really happy, right? Hung Hao, like it's really good. And then I would have to start speaking English. So we kind of did both. And then I also did some stuff for China tourism while I was there. So if you were to go to, for example, like the Great Wall of China or the Shanghai Tower or things like that, when you put in the audio headset, that's me. Welcome to the Great Wall of China, where for centuries the Chinese, that's me. Okay. And so I did a bunch of stuff there. I've also done work in the Philippines, Singapore, Bali, Kuala Lumpur, Thailand. Like I've been all over doing stuff in Asia. So that's probably the strangest, but I do a lot mostly now in London, England, and obviously LA. And then I am still a Canadian. So I do a lot still in Canada as well. I was proud to be a Canadian, right?
Oh, gotta be, right?
Gotta be. Yeah.
And so what's the kind of the latest Canadian project you were part of?
The latest Canadian stuff that I was doing, gonna say this has really been a busy summer for me. Like up until now, like I say summer, but I never know what season it is. Really, I did several small films in Alberta. So I did some student films for some people. I'm always into supporting the smaller films too. So I did one in Edmonton called Free Play, where I was a Russian mobster. I did another one called Necropolis 1935, which was the future. And in that film, I was kind of a bummed out drug dealer dude who overdoses in the end. I don't know that that's going to be a big surprise to anybody when you see the character. I did The Awakening, which is an award-winning science fiction show. And they're actually coming up with a feature on it, and I'm doing the same character. Funny enough, I'm a bad guy in that show. I also did some stuff for Pyramid Productions, which in Calgary is Larry Day's company, and they're partnered up with NBC Universal. We did, it was called Exhumed. I think it was called Exhumed. I better be careful. I think it was called Exhumed, and I played a police detective in that, obviously investigating crime scenes. And then I did a variety of other shows too. I spent a day on Heartland, which was kind of cool, everybody's favorite Canadian show. But yeah, so I'm doing lots in Canada. I guarantee there's some that I forgot there. I did Elon's Revenge as a hitman this year, and Mrs. Lockwood as well for the same producer. There's tons that I'm doing. It's crazy. I mean, now that COVID's done, everybody's trying to make movies again, right? Which I so appreciate. And then let's be honest, like services like Netflix and Paramount Plus and these, everybody's seen a lot of the content while we were on break. And so now they just really need more content to keep their subscribers there. So they're really like, if you're a filmmaker, now is the best time, I think, that I've ever seen in the history of the world, probably, to be either an actor or a filmmaker, because there's just so many opportunities that are out there. Not to mention the equipment is now at an all-time high in Prime. Anybody can shoot some amazing stuff. So it's time. If you've been sitting at home saying, I want to make a movie, do it. Do
it.
It.
For sure. Yeah. The one thing I find interesting about the streaming services nowadays, though, is I find they're starting to go back to the weekly releases, how we used to do them, right? Whereas, for a longest time there, like Netflix was, okay, boom, here's the entire series. Everybody would binge watch it in a weekend, then you're out of content, right? So I really do like the idea, as much as other people don't, of doing that weekly release, because then it to me, it helps the companies like Netflix and everything else, where they can actually spread out their content and slowly build up other content instead of having to mass produce on a really fast basis, right? We were getting some crap projects out there because of that, I think. So I think
it's interesting that you say that, because I've got friends that have worked in both ways, and it seems like Disney Plus is doing the drop of the show, like Mandalorian gets a weekly, or She-Hulk had a weekly. Whereas in my friend Sean is on Cobra Kai, obviously, and they shot the whole season and then they dump it all at once on Netflix. So I think it depends kind of whatever service you're doing. And Paramount Plus kind of has their own way of doing things. Like everybody's got their own way. But I kind of agree with you. I like the weekly thing, but I'm wondering if from a business model, it also keeps the subscribers around a lot longer. So I think there's wisdom in that. But I don't know. Maybe there's something that, again, maybe Netflix just has so much coming in that it's easier for them to take the whole series, drop it, and let people go nuts for a weekend and do all their Stranger Things or all their Cobra Kai or whatever it is that they're going to do. I don't know. Somebody must have a reason for it.
Well, for sure. And I think, I don't know, I mean, I'm speculating, but I think we were at a time there, especially during COVID, where it just, people wanted something to do, right? So that was what they
Yeah,
did. They binge watched absolutely everything that they could find. So from that perspective, I think it made sense to kind of have that content ready for people as quickly as
yeah.
possible.
Yeah, well,
Whereas,
I think they're still trying to keep it as quick as possible. The only difference too, though, is if you think about like a show like Stranger Things, or I guess any of them really, you've got so much that goes into creating those, aside from even just the writing, right? So no one wants to sort of, as a producer, rush something out the door and then have everybody go, "Well, we're glad it's here, but it sucks," right? We'd
yeah,
rather, kind of hold tight, wait a little bit. And if you think about it, in the 1950s, when TV was kind of starting to reach popularity, a lot of people were saying, well, this is the end of the movie theaters. Like, cinema is gone. And the reality is it's now happening. It took this many years for TV and broadcast to catch up. But I think the biggest reason why it's shifting, it's not that that the technology maybe back then was the thing. I think the thing is now we're finally telling stories on TV that are equally as comparable to film. If you think about it, I think even Mandalorian is, again, I'm not trying to make any enemies here, but I think Mandalorian is a stronger Star Wars product than the 3 movies we just got, right?
right.
People tend to think that this is more genuine, authentic, pure Star Wars than, say, The Force Awakens was. Now, I like them both. I really am a fan of both. But I can kind of see that, we are able to create a TV show that's still got the same cinematic power that the theatrical release does, right? And if you look at Marvel, even with their crossovers, what we just saw with, WandaVision and all these things, even what's in the theater, I mean, it has the same fan kind of impact as the actual theatrical release. So to some extent, I think, the world is it's leveled up its game everywhere, whether it's TV or cinema. And I think that's what's going to create the problem that cinema has to get people back to the theater. Why would you do that if you can stay at home and watch an episode of Stranger Things, or even when Walking Dead was out, that's just as good as anything you'll see in the theater, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And I mean, I think that's something they've struggled with for a while. I mean, I think it's been an ongoing thing where that conversation has come up as, like, cinema's dead kind of deal.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's
still,
kind of interesting. Yeah. The other thing I think is also interesting, if you look at movies, like, let's be honest, I mean, I think that the ad campaigns to get people to the theater have always been so expensive. If you even look, for example, like right now, I walked down Sunset the other day and there's posters for, obviously towards the Academy Awards, but for the Fablemans, full big blockbuster posters. Top Gun, same thing. Avatar 2, same thing. All these big billboards and everything. And those are not just in Los Angeles, those are all over the world. And we're seeing TV spots and marketing spots and all this kind of stuff. And, in some cases, that budget for the marketing can be just as much as the film itself or more. But when you put it onto a streaming service, well, those budgets for marketing are quite a bit lower because they already have the subscription base. People are already tuned in, and all they really need to do is put it up on, say, Netflix, where it says new releases or just added, and we're going to find it, right? So we don't necessarily have to see them spend this money on the marketing, and I think that that's also going to change the industry a lot too. I'm not saying they won't market, but I'm saying that they'll do more strategic marketing, and we'll see a lot more social media marketing, because they don't need to do the traditional radio and ad campaign, like TV ad campaigns that they used to do, which hopefully, we pray they put that into making better and better shows, right?
And I think, and I think that's why you're starting to see a lot of, like, the A-list actors as well going to TV. And, I mean, there's more money in it almost for them to be on a TV series than there is on a film nowadays, it seems, anyway.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because I've been involved in a lot of the inside conversations with either producers, directors, agents, or other actors like myself. And we don't actually look at it the way we used to. It used to be that if you were a TV actor, it was kind of like, okay, poo-poo on you and go do your show, have fun. And the feature film guys were a little bit snooty, and we were all aiming to get boys like this in our hands. And so we've got a little bit of a snootiness about us. But now the reality is we're delighted to be involved in cinematic style television, right? So it's almost where that line is becoming extremely blurred, that, an actor is an actor regardless of which kind of program he's appearing on. Now, I'm not saying that wall's totally gone, because it's not, but it is fading, and it is becoming sort of more, we'll play on both sides of the fence, and it doesn't even really matter. And it used to be, of course, there were even two different unions, AFTRA handled, you know, film and TV, and SAG handled film. And now it's like, well, they merged a number of years ago, as we know, but people aren't even really talking about it as a difference anymore, right? Like,
Right.
although all those lines are going away.
Right, which I don't think is a bad thing by any means.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's kind of get back on track about you.
Okay, well, I can talk about movies forever. I just love movies, so
right, totally, and I could as well, honestly. But I kind of want to get back to you because you've been doing this, like I said, for quite some time. When did you kind of get started? Like you were pretty young.
I was really young. In fact, it's funny. The very first time I was ever on television, I was 5, and it was a TV show in Calgary called The Buckshot Show, and I was in the audience, and that was my first time ever. Now, that I don't really consider that my first appearance because nobody would have known who I was. I was in an audience like singing Happy Birthday or something else, or who knows, whatever, right? But it was fun. I do remember, though, after they wrapped the show, they brought in food for all the kids, like McDonald's cheeseburgers. It was just like, right on. So I felt good being there. It was always great. But my first official job where I was paid, I was about 7. I was a newspaper boy in a CBC after-school special called Mildred McFall. I've never seen it, so don't ask me what it's about. I've looked for it, but who knows, right? It could be anywhere, but not on YouTube. Haven't seen it there. So, yeah, that was my first gig, and I still remember I was paid $50 for it. My grandpa took me to the set, so that was kind of special. And I remember craft services table had jelly-filled donuts, and I was in heaven. It was awesome.
and so I'm assuming then you, like, through high school, all that, you were part of the drama club, the whole
Of course. Yeah. In fact, I used to skip school in high school. If there was a movie going on in my city, I would skip school to go and be an extra.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. In fact, there is one movie that is on YouTube that me and a friend James skipped school to go do at the Stampede Grounds in Calgary called Primo Baby, all about racehorses. And you can see us clearly in lots of the shots. And we're there gambling, you know, as horse racing and stuff. But the reality is that we're like 16 or 15 or 14 or something like that. We're not supposed to be horse gambling, but we were. It's all awesome. Good. Yeah,
right?
Funny.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in that transition, I'm curious, have you done theater as well? Or is that something you never really partook in?
I've dabbled in theater, but to be honest with you, I have a really profound respect for theater actors because, number one, they get to do complete shows. And that's a lot of lines to memorize. So I've always been intimidated by that, to just like take that all on for like a whole night or a big run. The other thing that, you know, obviously they get to do it chronologically. And I'm not sure if I just don't have the gift to do that, but you probably got by now, even me on your show, I have ADD HD, which is ADD in high definition. And so I kind of need to have those little breaks between to do resets for scenes. Also, I find that sometimes it takes me a bit to get into my energy. I'm trying to kind of say this. I like the idea of sometimes having more than one take or being on the energy of film around me and like going through hair and makeup and being part of the energy of film before I get on set, because I feel like I get better performances in that kind of a setting than kind of coming out and, but soft light through yonder window breaks. It is the east and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, right? Like this kind of thing for like, it's just maybe not my groove so much. I'm better at just like shooting people and being a cop or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, in a short scene kind of deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those kind of things. So yeah, I haven't done a lot of theater. Maybe one day.
And that's fair. Like I've had quite a few guests on, and it's always a kind of a mixed bag. That's why I thought I'd get your take on it as well. You know, some actors love theater, and wish they could do more of it. You know, and then there's others that are like, no, I've never done theater. I don't want to do theater. Film is where it's at.
I love being an audience member. So I'll come to the theater like that. But I think mostly for me, I do prefer the cinema. And I guess it's like, if I'm looking back, I think the reason I'm even in this industry is because I fell in love with the idea of movie magic. Like as a kid, I mean, you know, all the big shows, like we've got things like, you know, Back to the Future and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars and E.T. and all these crazy blockbusters. That's really what kind of led me to be involved in the industry. So I wasn't kind of like a theater lover, right? I fell into theater, and there's a lot of friends I have that are in theater, and I admire their talents, and I love being part of that, but as an audience member. But for film, it's just different. I love to, you know, once it's all been said and done, sometimes there's a bit of a satisfaction to quietly sneak into the back of a theater and watch other people enjoying your work. So I'm watching them watch me and other friends that I have versus me being on stage looking out and seeing who's checking their phone, right? Like, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know. Everybody's got different reasons for doing things. I've always loved movies, so.
Okay. Actually, you kind of sparked another question.
Sure.
Do you like watching your own work?
No,
or you?
actually, I
Okay.
don't.
I was going to say because a lot of actors don't.
Yeah, my mom says that I actually am on TV more than I watch it, which is kind of funny. But the reason why isn't because I'm self-conscious about myself. I get it. I've seen it. But the reality is sometimes it is frustrating that what you felt was your best take winds up on the cutting room floor, right? So when everyone's telling the stories and editor, sometimes they don't grab your best stuff. And that can be frustrating. And films, as you know, are made by a committee. So it's lots of fingers that are touching the pot. So I'm just one part of that. The other thing that's also kind of interesting is, as you can imagine, I've already seen the story. I know how the story plays out. I know the script, and I've seen it from a different perspective, like being in front of the camera. So sometimes, no kidding, when I get on the other side and I watch what the camera has seen, I don't recognize it always. And I'll never forget, I was at a party a while ago, and it was a house party, and they were playing some TV in the background just casually as others were talking and doing all kinds of things. And all of a sudden I looked up, and there was an actor that I had done a show with a few years ago, and I was like, hey, I know that guy. He's really cool. And I started telling my friends, he was so neat. You guys would love him. He's just a sweetheart. All of a sudden, this other guy walks in, and I remember working with him too. And I'm like, I know that guy as well. Oh, these guys are like the two coolest. And I'm trying to like, sing their praises to my friends. And they're like, yeah, that's neat. That must have been fun working with them. I'm like, oh yeah, it totally is. Then all of a sudden on the same screen, I walked in, and I'm like, oops. And they're like, you knew. And I'm like, no, yeah. I had no idea that I was on that show with these guys. Like, I remember working with them, but I didn't know it was this show. So sometimes I didn't even recognize, like, because you're on the other side of the camera. You've got a totally different perspective of how this is turning out. And it's almost a bit surreal. And I think one of the coolest things that I've had is, I remember talking to Richard Dreyfuss one time when he saw Jaws. He said one of the coolest things that he ever experienced was when he went to see Jaws. It was such a good story and good film and scary that he actually kept watching it and forgot he was even in the film. That he just got so far into the movie that this is a great movie. And I've had a couple experiences like that where I've been so thankful that I've honestly forgot I was involved. And even when I came, I kind of was watching myself, but I was like, no, I'm so deep into the story. I know what I kind of remember the dialogue I said here, but I can't really remember like all of it. And I also don't know what all the other people were doing. So, I'll watch me. That's fine. We'll sit through that. But I'm really interested to see what these guys are doing, right? Like, I want to follow this. And when that happens, to me, that's kind of the magic again of why I began. I'm part of a story. And that's really the thing, right? Like, this is the reason I do it. Different actors do things for different reasons. But for me, it's the story of it, right?
I do want to talk a little bit more about your upcoming role as Piers Rothschild. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your character and the movie itself.
Yeah. So again, back to this idea, I'm not allowed to say too much, but I can tell you a few things. So my character is actually a movie producer in the film. So I get to play a producer. And my objective is we are going to shoot a documentary within the film. This is my character. He's going to shoot a documentary on some big cats that apparently have found their way into the English countryside. So in other words, there's a pride of black panthers that are loose, as well as some other cats that are in the forest. Now, how they got there, I can't say. Okay, so you'll have to come and see. But as I'm tracking these things, as you can imagine, with my camera crew and all these other people, there's a very interesting, unpredictable, super scary, crazy violent, full of the worst nightmares that you've ever had type organism that we encounter that we didn't expect, that's a lot more dangerous than a big cat. But it may have something to do with the big cats. Boy, that's pretty cryptic, right? So, so that's kind of my role in that. And like most good horror movies, I just want you to know that very few people get out alive. So I'll leave it at that, right?
Right? Yeah, that's
it's going to be a less than happy ending for a few people on that film.
Do you find because obviously you've had quite a variety in terms of the kind of characters you've done. Do you have a specific character type that you prefer to do, or?
That's a good question. I think one that I fall into quite a bit. I do a lot of cops, gunslingers and cowboy shows, hitmen, secret agents, detectives, these kinds of things. So I do enjoy doing those. And I had a really good experience. In fact, as you know, Tom Sizemore just recently passed away. So Tom was a friend of mine, and I worked with him on a couple of shows, and we were actually scheduled to do another one later this year, which obviously isn't going to happen now. But the first time that I met Tom, I had a really fun experience. So I was playing a detective. Well, Tom was the suspect. Turns out, of course, the murderer eventually. Anyways, this hasn't come out, so I can't say the name. But anyway, so Tom gets on the set, and he just wasn't super feeling it that day. He was a little bit under the weather, and he's a little bit higher up on the pole than me, so he could make some demands of the director. But before he did, he says, I'm just going to go tell this director, we're not going to do the script today. We're going to improv it. Are you cool with that? And I was like, what? Like, I've been preparing this for some time, right? So all of a sudden, last minute, he's like, yeah, no. We can wing this. Well, 3 days of shooting, whatever, and we're going to wing it. I'm like, okay, I'll do what you want to do. And so he talked to the director. The director's like, yeah, sure. And so literally my first time meeting Tom, I just went into sort of my best cop that I played before, and I arrested him again, and we went through the interrogation room stuff and all that kind of stuff, but there was no script. In fact, the script is in the shot because I bring it in as my files as what I've got on you, and I throw it on the desk. And I say, hey, this is, I don't know if you're allowed to cuss on this show, but I say, hey, this is going to be a shitty day for you. And he goes, I don't know about that. And that's how we started off. And we went right into it. And that's how we played it out. So it was fun.
I will ask one other question, and then we'll kind of wrap it up from there. And that's, do you have, what advice would you give a young person trying to break into this industry?
Well, I think, my advice may sound a little bit trite because it's been said this before, but I really want someone to feel this. The reality is, if you feel in your heart that you're called to become an actor, you need to listen to that. Because the reality is yes, you will have hard times and you'll have good times. And if you keep going, you'll have more good times and hard times. But the reality is if you say no to your heart, you're going to always have a bad time. You're going to always say, I wish I coulda, I shoulda, I wish I would have gone this route. And man, look at all these other people. Like, I could have played that role. I could have done this. So the reality is the best thing you can do is to follow your heart. And the other thing I think with that is just remember that this, like most other industries, is relationship based. So just be likable, be easy to work with, make friends, be helpful, be of service, be kind. Don't backtalk people and don't criticize others. Just remember that jealousy, criticism, comparison, and all those things are manifestation of a scarcity mindset. And nobody likes to work with people who contract. This whole business wants to work with people who are growing and expanding. And if you want to expand what you have to expand who you are. So always go get the trainings that you can do wherever you can do them. Go learn from whoever you can, and just be delightful and easy to work with. And you'll find that you'll succeed as long as you stick with it. And I also think it's good to get a couple of good mentors. In fact, it's always some of the best mentors that I've got have been casting directors who aren't afraid to tell me when I'm not performing at my best that I could do better. So it's okay to have people tell you you can do better, and seek that out, right? Don't be afraid to up your game. And I think it's those that are selfish and think, oh, I'm doing good enough as it is, or I'm good enough, or I'm really talented. Those are the people that fail. We're never so talented that we can't learn more, right? And so that's probably the advice that I'd give. But the other thing I'm going to just share is just remember that you're creating joy for so many people out there. This is just not about you. And even like speaking as an actor, a lot of my joy comes from watching my friends perform. So get a good set of people that you can cheer for and that also cheer for you, right?
I think that's a great way to end that. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
On that note, we'll kind of wrap this one up. Thank you so much for joining me on the show and enlightening us with your stories and opinion. And,
it's been a pleasure.
And yeah, best of luck to you. And looking forward to some of the other projects that you've got coming out. For example, Big Cats and Hitman 101, which we didn't really chat on much, but looking forward to those. And thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.